Hi, I'm Jenny from American Hydroponics and welcome to our live webinar. Today we're going to talk about one of the most popular topics we have, and that really is kind of the operations, the costs and the revenue and the profitability of running a hydroponic business. So when we talk about this, I'm going to try to differentiate because there really are two types of hydroponic business. One of them is the Get Growing packages, which you see in our greenhouse right here. If you've seen any of our webinars before, you're familiar with our Get Growing packages. And this one right here is our 10K package. And this is for somebody, maybe an individual or a family who wants to run their own business. This is what we call the Get Growing package, and it comes with everything you need. So I'll try and differentiate that between that and someone who wants to run, for example, a half acre or larger. Those will be two slightly different business models. So I'll try to differentiate that as we go along so you can be clear. It's very easy to start with something like this size here and grow bigger. But some people want to start with, for example, a half acre that produces much more because they have the markets for it. So let me just say, first of all, the basic cost inputs to a hydroponic business, regardless of what size you're doing, will be the greenhouse, the commercial greenhouse that we see here, the growing system that you see right here. This is an NFT growing system, and it grows all kinds of leafy greens, culinary herbs, chard, kale. You see some beautiful bok choy back here. It can grow any of those sorts of things. And then we have what we call the bucket system or the vine crop system, and ours is on gutter, and that can grow the fruiting crops, which would be a cucumber, tomato, pepper, eggplant, anything like that. Primarily, because it's what most people are interested in, we'll primarily be talking about the NFT system and the leafy greens. However, all of these concepts apply to both. They're basic business practices. So again, the basic cost inputs will be your greenhouse, your commercial greenhouse. There are some extras that we'll talk about, and then the growing system. So those are your basic costs. The revenue side of things is really simple. You've got basically one type of revenue, and that is selling your produce. Some of our customers gather different kinds of revenue in their farm because they make it a destination. Maybe they have a soil farm as well. Maybe they have some space for yoga or events or classes. That's another great way to make a little bit of income off of your farm. Or you might hold events at your farm or at your facility in some way. So it's another way, but your basic, your primary revenue will be selling your produce. So those are your revenue inputs. Again, your cost inputs will be your greenhouse, your growing system. There's some extras and some operational costs. Your revenue will be primarily selling your produce. That's what we'll focus on. Your cost inputs will be land, whether you lease land or rent land. And for those larger customers that want a half acre or more, you will have to be careful. However large you want your operation to be, you will need twice as many acres. For example, if you want to start with 2.5 acres and you know that you want to add another 2.5 acres for 5 acres, the minimum amount of land that you'll need is 10 acres. So for something like this greenhouse is 30 by 96 feet, so it's about 2,880 square feet. You'll need about 10,000 square feet minimum. Now, one of the things which is the next cost input you'll have is land clearing. So if you have some land that maybe is slightly hilly or really rocky or has trees or buildings around it, you'll need to be sure of a couple of things. One, you'll need a very flat surface, so you'll need to excavate your land. You'll need to make sure that it has the ability to support utilities. Water is a big one. You'll need to be sure that you have water to your facility, either municipal water or being able to drill a well. The other thing is if you have trees around, you may have a lot of land and it might be slightly rolling, and you can flatten it and excavate and maybe move some dirt around, but you'll need to be careful of the trees. You'll have to make sure that throughout the year you don't have those trees growing up and shading your greenhouse, because you want to grow in full sun as much as possible, and you don't want sometime during the winter or summer or any season for the trees to be shading your greenhouse and not providing your plants with the light and that they need to grow. So land clearing will be a cost. The greenhouse itself will be a cost. Now this greenhouse here, the greenhouses that come in our Get Growing package, this is similar to that. It is it's a twin polycarbonate greenhouse. It's got automated vents and lights and shade cloth, everything that comes with a greenhouse. This greenhouse right now is about $89,000. It's not an inexpensive investment. When you're talking about a multi-acre greenhouse, again, as a commercial quality, you're looking at something anywhere between about $18 and $24 per square foot just for the greenhouse. So then you'll want to consider as well whether you're going to have a cement pad, which we have in here, and you'll want for any of your larger greenhouses, or whether you just want to put a ground cover down. If you've seen some of our photos or our pictures on Instagram or social media or some of our other videos, you'll know that here at this greenhouse we have a cement pad that has hydronic heating in it, but at our other greenhouses near our warehouse, we actually have ground cover down. We have a white DeWitt ground cover. So if you're going to put a cement pad down, that's very expensive as well, and it varies from place to place throughout North America. Permits, of course. So you have your land, you've cleared your land, you've decided how you're going to do it, whether it's cement or not. Then you have to make sure you get permits, and so you'll need to get the actual greenhouse. When you order a greenhouse, we can certainly help you with that. Again, the Get Growing packages come with a greenhouse. You get to choose the type of greenhouse. We'll help you for your area. They come from Atlas Greenhouse Manufacturers in Atlanta, Georgia, and you'll get full drawings so that you can take those into your planning commission or your zoning commission, and they can look at the plans, look at the drawings. They're engineered, stamped, so that you can be sure that you can get the permits to put up your greenhouse. Then there's construction of the greenhouse. Generally, as a general rule of thumb throughout the industry, construction of the greenhouse costs about 60% of the cost of the greenhouse. For example, as I mentioned, this greenhouse is about a $89,000 greenhouse. You can expect to pay anywhere between $50,000 and $60,000 just for the construction of the greenhouse. So that kind of gives you a clue. Now, if you're really handy and you don't mind doing it, it's like putting up an erector set. You can do the construction and the assembly of the greenhouse yourself, but you'll need some tradesmen there. You'll need an electrician probably. We'll provide you with plumbing plans to make sure you get everything plumbed correctly, but you'll definitely want an electrician to help you get everything wired correctly. When you order your greenhouse, oftentimes an environmental controller, they've partnered with greenhouse companies, and they'll make sure you get the right environmental controllers. There are several of them out there. AutoGrow has a great environmental controller called the Multi, and the great thing about the Multi is it allows you to grow and expand by simply adding one more sensor. So that's a great option. Wadsworth, our Get Growing packages come with a Wadsworth. The environmental controller controls everything you see in here. So it controls the shade curtains, it can control the lights, it can control the CO2, it can control the heater. It can control when the vents open and close based on heat and humidity. So your environmental controller and understanding that is really the heart of growing successfully. Generally, greenhouse manufacturers do not, they don't manufacture the environmental controller, but they'll partner with different companies. Any greenhouse can accept any kind of environmental controller. Again, so we put Wadsworth in our Get Growing company, in our Get Growing packages. There is a company called Atom Controllers. It's a brand new company. They're we're very excited about their product. They do environmental controllers. Argus and Priva, if you're into the larger environmental controllers, if you're looking at a half an acre or an acre or multi-acres, you'll want probably something like an Argus or a Priva or something that can handle a large range of greenhouses like that. Then you'll want a tank house. We have a very small tank house here. Every greenhouse will probably want a tank house. It serves a couple of different purposes. It's where the controls to your nutrient dosing is for your reservoirs. It's a storage shed. It's where your nutrients go. You'll want a tank house. Very easy. You can get a pre-manufactured shed if you have a system this size, or if you're going with a larger multi-acre system, you can include that in what we would call a packing house. And in a large multi-acre system, you would have maybe an acre-sized greenhouse. You'd have a large packing house that included your employees' area, your walk-in cooler, your offices, maybe the employee bathrooms, and some workspace for harvesting and packaging and seeding and doing all of that. So you just heard me mention as well a walk-in cooler. And we have a company that we partner with called CoolBot. We've actually built one of their walk-in coolers. It's only about a 35 square foot cooler, but it is more than adequate to house all of our produce from our 10K bundle, so that once you harvest it, it can immediately go into the walk-in cooler. That walk-in cooler cost us a total of $1,600 to build. It wasn't a lot, and that was including the CoolBot, the air conditioner, all of the lumber and the insulation and the racking inside. Now let's talk about the growing system. So this is an NFT growing system, and you'll need this. That's anywhere, depending on the size of the system you want. In the Get Growing package, a 10K system like this, the entire growing system, which comes with everything, including the propagation system, it comes with the tables, comes with the plumbing, comes with all of the NFT channels, comes with everything you need, including growing supplies. That, for this size system, is about $51,000, and that takes care of everything you need for your growing system. If you're talking about a larger half acre or larger, your price per square foot for the growing system will be anywhere from about $10 to $12 a square foot for the NFT system. The bucket system or the vine crop system is a little bit less. It's maybe $8 to $10 per square foot, to give you some budget numbers. But with the growing system, so you need the system itself, and then you'll need the growing supplies. Again, for this size system and for our Get Growing packages, the growing supplies are all included in that number I gave you. But the growing supplies that you'll need are the growing medium, you'll need seeds, you'll need nutrients, you'll need some additives. We use some OMRI certified and all natural fungicides like Trifecta. We use cease and mill stop in case you get a little powdery mildew, or in case you start to see a little infestation of aphids. We use neem oil. Again, they're all natural, but you'll want to have those on hand. Packaging, we have a whole webinar on packaging. There are so many different ways to package. You can package in a clamshell, you can package in a bag, you can package as a wholesaler in a crate or a waxed produce box. Lots of ways to package, and that will be something that you will be sure you want to spend some real time on, because that's also marketing your company. So if you have a produce, if you have a clamshell, you'll have to have a label on top of it, and those are very expensive, aside from the fact that many clamshells are not recyclable. So they're all plastic and they're not recyclable. So if you use bags, plastic bags are very inexpensive and they can be recyclable. Or you can, if you're doing Industrial deliveries, you can just package them in a wax produce box, or we use plastic recyclable bins or reusable bins, where we'll drop them off 1 week, and then when we go back the next week, we'll pick up those and drop off new ones. So we've had them now for about 2.5 years, as long as this greenhouse has been built, that we've been using those same bins to deliver in. So all of these things, you have to consider everything that goes in to producing, for example, this head of lettuce right here, which will turn into a head of lettuce. There's the cube, there's the seed, there's the nutrients. Everything it takes to grow these plants costs you money. You want to remember that when you're looking at the profitability of your company. So for part of the growing system, one of the things you'll need that oftentimes people forget, seeds need to be refrigerated and kept refrigerated. You can't just leave them sitting in your greenhouse where the environment might be warm and humid. It'll kill the seeds. They don't last very long. So we just have for here a small, like a dorm room refrigerator, something like that, that we just keep the seeds in. That works really great. Those aren't very expensive. They're under $100, but it is something you're going to need to consider when setting up your business. And again, that can go in the tank house. That actual refrigerator can go in the greenhouse if you have room, or it can go in your office. The seeds just have to be refrigerated. The lighting, you see there's lighting here for your Get Growing package, the lighting for the nursery and the propagation, the two most important areas that need to be lit. The lighting comes with it in the Get Growing packages. If you live in a far northern country or far northern area of North America, you'll probably want to get supplemental lighting throughout your entire greenhouse to be able to grow pretty successfully year-round. So that additional lighting will cost you something. LEDs are very expensive, but the cost of running them is much less. HIDs are not as expensive, but they cost more in electricity. And then, of course, you'll want to remember the maintenance. Every year we bring in a scissor lift, we clean out the roof vents, we clean out the side vents, we go up onto the roof and we clean out the gutters. We get a spray washer and we spray it all down and clean it all out. We spray wash the outside. Those all, again, renting a spray washer if you don't have one, scissor lift if you need to repair something. All of that maintenance costs you a little bit of money. So that's the growing system. So we've talked about the cost inputs for the greenhouse. We've talked about the cost inputs for the growing system. Now let's talk about the operating expenses. Of course, you're going to need the growing supplies that we talked about. The seeds, they're about 2 cents a piece if you get pelleted lettuce seeds. That's about the most expensive seed you can get. So everything besides a pelleted lettuce seed will be less than that. But they're 2 cents a piece. The growing cubes we use Oasis. They're probably some of the least expensive out there, and we think they do the best job. This is an Oasis cube right here, and that's about 2.5 cents a piece. So that's the Oasis growing cube. And then the nutrients. So we've calculated using our nutrient formula, whether you use lettuce or Tasman Bay or whichever one you choose to use. Our lettuce formula costs about 4 to 6 cents to grow a head of lettuce from seedling on up. So you'll want to consider that piece. Utilities. Now, utilities will be one of your biggest costs of the greenhouse, depending on the type of greenhouse you have and where you live in the country, and of course what season it is. But you will need to be sure that you have electrical, water, of course, gas or propane, and all of those things you'll have an ongoing cost for your operating expenses. The cost of your land, if you lease it or rent it, you'll need to be sure and include that in there. Packaging, we talked a little bit about packaging, but you'll want to be sure to include the packaging even if you're just using a produce box, a wax produce box, and you think you're not packaging the individuals. Still, those produce boxes cost you money, so consider that. Delivery costs. Do you need to deliver to your customers, or are they going to come here and pick it up? Most customers will expect a delivery to their facility, whatever it is, a restaurant, a school, a grocery store. So you have to consider the cost of delivery, the time of the driver and the gas and the use of whatever vehicle you're using. Business insurance. A lot of times people don't think about this. There are two types of insurance you can get. Standard business insurance, which is a liability insurance, and of course workers' comp and all that, but there's also crop loss insurance. Little more difficult, and you'll have to go to an ag specialist to get something like that, but we have had customers who've had crop loss insurance, and it has paid out when their utilities went out, their electricity went out, the pumps stopped, and their entire greenhouse, which was a large multi-acre greenhouse, failed because they weren't getting any water to it. So because the pump stopped working, the electricity. So in that case, the crop insurance definitely was worth it to them. So if you have a larger facility, you definitely want to consider crop loss insurance. The office and administrative costs. If you don't have a current up-to-date computer, you'll want to invest in one of those. A small system like an accounting system, whether it's QuickBooks or something else, you'll have to have ways to bill your customers, and you'll have to have ways to keep track of all of your costs and your expenses, so you'll need an accounting system in there. And just the regular, whether it's a cell phone or an office phone, whatever you have, all of those little administrative costs that you may not think about, they all cost money. They all will eat away at your profitability if you don't plan and track for them first. Also here in the greenhouse, we test our water. We test our water periodically about every quarter or so, and you just want to make sure everything is flowing right with your water. Water testing is really inexpensive. It's $100. You take a sample of water, 2 samples of water, you send it off to a lab that we use, although if you have a local one, you can use it. They test your water, they make sure everything is fine in your water and all is good. And pest management is another expense for operating a greenhouse on a regular ongoing basis. There are some pest managements. I mentioned some fungicides that we use, some OMRI or organic fungicides like Trifecta, Cease, Millstop. But you may also want to do some integrated pest management with things like ladybugs and release ladybugs into your greenhouse once a month. That might only cost you $50, but again, everything, if you track it, everything kind of eats away at your profitability. So that pest management you want to consider as well. So we've talked about greenhouse costs, we've talked about the growing system costs, and we've talked about some of the operating expense costs. Now, in all of this, while you might be frantically taking notes or hitting pause and replaying, we also have a business package plan for $250 on our online store that a lot of people have taken advantage of. It's an hour's worth of consulting, and it's an Excel spreadsheet that is entirely customizable for you. Go online and check out our business plan. Give us a call if you have any questions. We're happy to explain it all to you, but it's a great tool to kind of see in your area what might be profitable for you. So last thing we have to talk about, this mostly applies to those that are looking at a larger facility. And let me just say, if you're looking at a larger facility, anything from a ½ acre to an acre or more, you'll want to really invest in a solid business plan. And while we don't do those kind of detailed business plans, we do have connections with people who do, and we're happy to make that introduction, and you can work through with them on the whole business plan side of it, regardless of where you are in the world. And these are business plans that can actually be taken to a group of investors. They can be taken to a bank to use for your financing. So again, that one's, and they're a couple of $1,000s. They're not inexpensive, but the amount of use that you get from them is great, and it really helps you dial in and zero in what you can expect on profitability. So then the last bit of costs are some of these extra things. You'll need a delivery van. Are you just going to use your vehicle, or are you going to get something that maybe has your logo on the outside or something like that? You'll need packaging and harvesting equipment. Again, this is for those larger facilities. For the Get Growing bundles, you can easily manage the packaging and the harvesting yourself. But when you get into a larger facility, you'll want something that does it automatically. Otherwise, you'll have a dozen people full-time just packaging. For example, an acre's worth of our NFT system lets you grow at full productivity 34,000 heads of lettuce a week. It's a lot of packaging. So you can see when you get larger than that how the packaging and harvesting equipment comes in handy. We have in our greenhouse hydronic heating. And hydronic heating in our greenhouse here is actually in floor. It's in the cement. So you'll want, if you want to do something like that, the great thing about hydronic heating is that it keeps your temperature constant. It heats up very slowly and it cools down very slowly. But the intent is that it keeps your greenhouse at a constant temperature year-round, and it goes from the bottom up. So it really heats the roots of the plant, which is where you really want to keep the little roots and the feet of the plants warm. You don't want them to have cold feet and be miserable. You'll also want to be sure that you get a company that specializes in agricultural hydronic heating, not in-floor residential hydronic heating or anything else like that, but make sure you get an agricultural company, and we can help hook you up with some of those. Another thing you may want to do, which is in our plan here, is to add solar heating, and to be able to add solar heating so that your greenhouse becomes a net zero carbon footprint in your location. So solar heating, you'll have to have an area outside. Clearly you can't put it on the roof like you do in residential houses because that'll block sunlight, but look into solar heating for your greenhouse. Rainwater catchment. Again, on some very large greenhouses, that's going to become a standard requirement for to reduce water use, is water catchment or rainwater catchment. The other thing, that no matter what size greenhouse you have, whether it's a get growing package or a larger facility, once you work out your whole budget and you realize that it's going to cost you X number of dollars for your facility each month of your just your operating expenses, you'll want to be sure that you have working capital in there, at least 6 months of working capital in there. So you'll have that, and that way if you have a few low months or as you're kind of getting started, you'll be sure and cover all your expenses. So we've talked about the costs of the greenhouse and everything that it entails for a commercial greenhouse. We've talked about the costs of the growing system and everything the growing system entails. We've talked about operating expenses and operating supplies that you'll need, and then we talked about extras you'll need. So we've pretty much covered, in a broad sense, all of your costs and expenses. The revenue piece of it is pretty straightforward and simple. Every one of these holes represents money to you. So you want to be sure that you have a viable plant growing in every one of these holes. For example, these are our nurseries, and this plant, when it grows to full harvestable weight, is going to be worth, say it's $1.50 to you. Most of our customers get about $1.50 for a full head of lettuce for a wholesaler. Now, if you sell direct to a consumer, or if you sell through a farmer's market, you could easily get $3 for a head of lettuce. So you have to consider that when you're looking, I'm going to walk back here. So when you're looking at the basil, so your basil plant in each of these holes, that represents minimum $1.50 or whatever your market is, but you shouldn't get less than $1.50 for that. So you want to be sure that everything you do, you're planting. You can see we have some empty spaces here. Again, this is a teaching greenhouse, but additionally they just harvested everything today. So you'll want to be sure that each one of these holes is full with a viable plant. So that means when you're back to seeding, you want to seed about 10% more than you're going to end up with. So if some of them don't mature, if some of them aren't viable, you're still not leaving a blank hole. You should always consider every empty hole here is lost revenue. So let's talk about the revenue for just a minute. All of our customers get minimum $1.50. Some get $1.65 for a head of lettuce, a bunch of basil, and that's selling wholesale. When they go and sell to a farmer's market or a farmer stand or in something like a community-sponsored agriculture, you can get anywhere from $2.50 to $3.50 per plant in those programs. So you'll want to consider what your revenue is, and you'll want to have a mix of it. So you don't want necessarily all of your product going to one buyer, because if that buyer cuts back, or if that buyer says, hey, I don't need anything this week, you're a little out of luck. So it's always a great idea to have a couple of different buyers going on. Maybe you have one wholesaler, you have a CSA program going on, and maybe you do 1 or 2 farmers markets a week, something like that. So you have a nice spread of your revenue coming in, because the basics of profitability is you have more money coming in than you have money going out. You've heard the long list of costs that we have going on. And the basic simple revenue is every one of these plants is worth money to you. Now, having said that, we have hundreds and hundreds of customers who have successful, profitable, and expanding hydroponic businesses, not just throughout the country, but around the world. We have customers in 66 countries. We have hundreds of customers here in the US, and all of them have successful businesses. Just keeping in mind, you have to make sure you have more money coming in than you have expenses going out. So you have to track every expense, and you have to make sure that every hole has a viable plant in it so you can get revenue for that plant. If you really are interested in nailing down all of these numbers for your specific location, for your specific region, I'd highly encourage you to go and purchase the business planning package, because not only is the spreadsheet great because it's very customizable and you can use it for all sorts of things, but you get the consulting of at least an hour for your very specific purposes. So that's the profitability and costs going into a hydroponic business. It might seem a little bit overwhelming, but it's not. We have, as I mentioned, hundreds of customers throughout the US and hundreds more around the world that do this and have a profitable and expanding business. And we would love to help you get up and running a expandable and profitable business in hydroponics. Get Growing package is a great way to do that. If you go online, you can get the Get Growing bundles. You can get all the documentation, all of the brochures. You can see everything that comes in it. A lot of it you'll have heard me talk about already with the growing supplies and with the greenhouse, environmental controls, all of that sort of stuff. So go check out our Get Growing bundles. Go check out our business plan. Give us a call. Email us at info@amhydro.com if you have any questions. We've been around a long time. We've been doing this a long time, and we have a lot of customers out there that are successful. We can help you become the next successful hydroponic business in your community. There it is. We have a couple of specials. You've heard me mention the business planning package. That's a great one. We also have seminars, 2-day seminars that are held right here. You get in, you get your hands dirty, you learn all the business side of things. Our June one filled up so quickly that we went ahead and added an additional seminar. That one will be August 22nd and 23rd. And we've already had signups for that one, so I encourage you, if you're interested, to email us at info@amhydro.com or check it out on the website. We also have one October 17th and 18th. They're always a Thursday, Friday. Again, it's a 2-day seminar. You spend half of the day learning kind of the classroom stuff, and then you spend the other half of the day here in the greenhouse, working the greenhouse and understanding everything you need. Next webinar will be in July, on July 18th, and that'll be indoor hydroponic farming. So that one will be a lot of fun. We'll talk about a lot of different things as far as indoor farming, and it's called controlled environment agriculture, and it can either be considered in a greenhouse or actually in a warehouse or in an office building, but indoors, controlled environment ag. So indoor hydroponic farming, and that will be July 18th.